The Chargers wide receivers are thriving. Quentin Johnston continues to put up wide receiver 1 numbers. Keenan Allen, a quiet week, but he still has 5 catches. Ladd McConkey, on the other hand, only 1 reception on 6 targets. This looks really, really broken.
With McConkey, like, I see major reasons to buy low. So Ladd last year averaged 7 targets per game. He's at 6.8 targets per game right now, and it's simply like he dropped a few passes last week. Chemistry's been a little off with Herbert, and I think this is like a case of not seeing the forest through the trees.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Week 5 fantasy football start sit advice. Which players should you sit? Which players should you start? Which players should you put in your flex? Which players are we trusting and which players are we not trusting at this point in the year? Theo Greminger with Graham Barfield, Fantasy Football Daily on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network and Fantasy Points YouTube. Graham, this is an ugly week. You have 6 teams on bye. You have another few players who are now injured for the season, including Malik Neighbors, Tyreek Hill. This is getting ugly. This is going to be a replacements week. It's a weird week. Let's start off right at the top. Let's talk about Woody Marks. Woody Marks had his big breakout performance last week. Marks, of course, had that incredible two-way ability on display, had a rushing score, also had a receiving score, and the volume was very productive as well. 17 carries and 5 targets. He caught 4 of them for 50 yards and a touchdown. But the 17 carries to me was really the big positive. We liked him coming out of USC, but I didn't really anticipate he'd be somebody that would be getting close to 20 carries in a game. We've seen this big performance. Houston goes to 1-3 on the season after beating Tennessee. Is Woody Marks a must-start player for fantasy managers this week in week 5? Baltimore this week, Graham.
Yeah, he's one of the best RB2 plays on this slate, and it just like keeps getting better and better for him, right? Like you nailed the usage was amazing. Snaps have come up in 4 games, but this spot is looking really nice. I mean, Lamar Jackson is going to miss. The Ravens are implied to score like 19.5 points this week. That's 4th fewest. So yeah, I mean, they're going to catch kind of sliding Ravens team that's playing really bad run defense right now. Last 3 weeks, Theo, they've given up 5.1 yards per carry. So yeah, Marks is locked in, RB2. Good on you if you stashed him, drafted him late. He looks awesome. And I mean, Joe Mixon doesn't seem like he's going to play this season at this point. He's done basically nothing. So we'll see when they get Mixon back. But I mean, yeah, I fully expect Marks to continue to ether Chubb. And the other thing, Theo, is like they're not doing the Dare Ogunbowale nonsense anymore. It's all Marks on passing down, which is also huge.
Yeah, and the 5 targets is something that I think is very, very sustainable for Marks. Just to put it in perspective, would you rather start Woody Marks this week or Tony Pollard?
Marks. I mean, Marks was RB9 by XFP. I think Tyjae Spears will be back this week too.
That's an interesting one for sure for the Pollard usage. Woody Marks or Derrick Henry?
Oh man, I can't. I'm not there yet. But man, this is the thing with Henry. This is what Scott and I have been talking about with this guy forever. It's like he is the RB1 when like his team wins, but like a low end RB2 in losses. And like I was saying, yeah, Ravens are dogs in this spot with no Lamar.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry, the other Scott Barrett tweet that he always loves to drop about this time of the year is how Henry's production trends up in October. Henry's production trends up in November. So we'll see if that's still the case at his age. But yeah, Woody Marks, I think, breaking ties with Marks versus a lot of other players. And when we think about these rookie backs with pass catching ability, a lot of times we think of them as these dynamic talents and guys that could have these ceilings. But when it comes to Marks, I actually think he's got a pretty safe floor moving forward because the lack of weapons on Houston, the confidence level that the coaching staff showed in him this past week, and the floor he's going to have as a receiver, because again, they don't have an established wide receiver 2 right now. Dalton Schultz is getting about all he can handle. He's got 6 targets back-to-back weeks. You want to get the ball in Woody Marks' hands. He's also a little bit of an older rookie. He's like 24 years old. So it's not a guy that we worry about being able to like rise up. He's pretty much a grown-ass man at this point. So Woody Marks, I agree with you. A ton of confidence there. Last week, we saw the return of Chris Godwin. What are fantasy managers supposed to do with him this week?
Yeah, the box score obviously wasn't great. I just had the 3 catches for 26 yards, but I mean, full-time role, 86% route share, coming back from his first game, in a basically nearly a full calendar year. I think it was like 11 months. But yeah, I mean, huge role, 25% of the first reads. He had like a wide receiver 2-ish role by expected fantasy points. I think the big thing though is like his separation skills were really good. Posted like top 12 figures on the week by separation score, by win rate. You love to see that, obviously. Seattle has not been like super great against slot receivers this year. They've kind of been like a slot funnel where their perimeter corners are playing really well. It's forcing everything to the middle of the field because they play so much too high. And yeah, decent spot. Seattle's given up like the 6th, 7th most yards per game to slot receivers. It's a pretty good spot for Godwin. I think he's firmly back in like the circle of trust already, just based off this volume.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think it's Igbuka as the wide receiver 1 there, but Godwin safely as the wide receiver 2. Be interesting to see how this thing shakes out before Mike Evans returns. Notably, Tampa Bay did not put Mike Evans on the injured reserve as we maybe thought would happen. So this could be a pretty quick ramp up, a little quicker than we anticipated when it comes to Evans. The other thing we want to circle is if you are tracking the Tampa Bay game, make sure you're keeping an eye on this running back situation. Graham and I are recording this on Wednesday, so we could have some Bucky Irving news at any moment. But it sounds like it could possibly be a Rachaad White game. Wonder if that's going to funnel any more touches or targets to the wide receivers. White, of course, would probably be somewhat of a like-for-like replacement for Irving, certainly in the receiving department. Maybe we'd also see some touches for Sean Tucker, but I think that would bode well for Godwin if Irving was going to miss. This is a tough game for Tampa Bay for sure. That Seattle defense has been a major problem for a number of teams they've faced this year. So we're going to keep an eye on that one. Let's talk about one more player who I think is back to being a really, really trustworthy player. Graham, we were sort of on an island at Fantasy Points. It's sort of like digging our heels in, being in the pro Xaiver Worthy crowd. There's some, not necessarily haters, but there's some disbelievers in Xaiver Worthy. Worthy comes back. He has a career high regular season yardage total record for himself in his first full game played this season. Of course, he went out early in game 1. And Worthy also leads Kansas City in targets, leads Kansas City, of course, in receiving yards, also leads Kansas City in rushing yardage. He gets those 2 manufactured rush attempts, has 38 yards on the ground. Usage was just fantastic for Xaiver Worthy. Where are we valuing him? Is he in the high-end wide receiver 2 category, sort of moving forward? Your thoughts on Worthy this week?
Yeah, I think the Worthy thing was simple for me in the sense that like the Chiefs are in like the high-end circle of trust with, when it comes to pass catchers, even though Mahomes has struggled throwing deep as of late, like he's been a little better this season. And with Worthy, it's like they just desperately need this guy to get downfield, obviously, but also, like you mentioned, have the design touches just to give them some like run after the catch ability. You mentioned it, man. Like he got there full, 83 yards and not a full-time role. He only ran a route on 63% of their pass plays. But dude, last 11 games, I mean, he's putting up 14.6 half PPR points per game. That's wide receiver 9. That includes the postseason. He had that huge Super Bowl, but he was starting to trend up at the end of last regular season. I know all of this is without Rashee Rice, and Rice really is like an awesome buy low. You and I were talking about it on our rest of season show with Scott and Ryan this past week. Like Rice is an awesome buy right now, but I think Worthy is too. This is a great spot for him too. I mean, Jacksonville allows the 5th most yards per game to opposing outside wide receivers. They've given up, plenty of deep plays. They gave a big deep play to Nico Collins a couple weeks ago. I like this a lot for Worthy this week. He should be a borderline wide receiver 1, I think, on this slate because it's so barren at receiver, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jacksonville's also 3-1. This is a huge game for both Jacksonville and Kansas City. Kansas City has a chance to push their record to 3-2. If Jacksonville can also make a statement against Kansas City and push their record to 4-1. This is a really, really fun one. For me, I'm just leaning towards starting Kansas City receivers rest of season because I'm in on Patrick Mahomes and this offense being very, very pass happy. I think it's Xaiver Worthy, and I actually think Xaiver Worthy, I agree with you, he's a great, great buy because even though the production is strong there, I think there's a little bit of market apprehension with a lot of the same Xaiver Worthy faders are saying that he'll sort of go into a shell when Rashee Rice returns. Not so sure about that. We're not really calculating for Worthy sort of establishing himself the next few weeks. We're also not accounting for maybe Rashee Rice needs a game or two to really ramp himself up. So I'm very much in on Rashee Rice, but I also think Xaiver Worthy, and I think the second half of the year, that Kansas City Chiefs passing game could just be humming. Patrick Mahomes could be a guy that every single week we're talking about like a top 5 starter rest of season when we get to like week 8 and they're both comfortably in there. So start Xaiver Worthy every single week. If you want access to all of our amazing projections, all of our amazing tools, all of our incredible articles, including my articles, Graham's articles, Ryan Heath, Scott Barrett's, etc., subscribe to Fantasy Points. Use the code Theo and get 15% off any single Fantasy Points package. And if you want to really level your game up, consider a subscription to Fantasy Points Data Suite, the best source of statistics and analytics anywhere in fantasy football. Graham, let's talk about it. Got a couple of ugly sits. I mean, what a difference a year makes. I had a league where I literally needed like just a few points out of Chase Brown and Jamar Chase heading into the fourth quarter, and I ended up losing the matchup. It was a dynasty team that last year cashed majorly, won the league easily. This year, my team is 0-4. Chase and Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, CeeDee Lamb. It's just a Joe Burrow, a murderer's row of injuries and bad things have happened. But it was almost comical not getting that win. You can't trust any Cincinnati Bengal right now with Jake Browning. Of course, we're starting Jamar Chase. We're not going to go there. But are we starting T. Higgins, a guy that we were drafting as a high-end wide receiver too at the end of August? Is he in our lineups or not this week?
Yeah, this is just painful, man. I mean, just it's basically like worst case scenario for Browning. Like, I think we kind of got a little bit fooled by that small sample when he filled in for Burrow for what was it, like 8 or 9 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, this offense is like non-functional. They like gave up in the second half against the Broncos too. The one thing that Chase has going for him, man, is like he's still averaging like 9 targets per game. And, Chase on 9 targets per game is going to have some explosion games. The problem is like these two receivers have played basically 5.5 games with Browning. And, Higgins is like at 5.1 targets per game. That's like wide receiver 40-ish. Yeah, it's brutal for Higgins. I'm going to list him as a sit this week. I listed Chase Brown as a sit last week. I still thought that, maybe with Surtain on Chase, there's a chance that Higgins would, make a few plays on Riley Moss. And he's just like Browning's catchable throw rate is really, really low right now. It's scary hours for the Bengals right now, man. It sucks.
Yeah, and you hate to play sliding doors, but if the Bengals had let T. Higgins walk and the Bengals had signed a cheaper wide receiver 2 or just used Andre Yoshevich or something like that and use that money on the offensive line, or if they had decided to use those draft picks where Cincinnati actually used 3 of their first picks in the NFL draft on defensive players. If you're going to go all in on this, like, hey, we're putting all our money into Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, then at least have an offensive line that can hold them up. The offensive line has just been so bad this season. I won't say bad quarterbacks. I'll say backup quarterbacks because not all of them are bad. Backup quarterbacks, and certainly Jake Browning is, a lot of people will say you should have just said bad. These quarterbacks who are not starters, they can't thrive without positive offensive line play. So I think we didn't necessarily factor that in. I'll take the L for Jake Browning. I certainly have got some flack for recommending him as a waiver wire ad. But last time we saw him in a starting position in 2023, he had 5 QB1 weeks, 4 wins, but the offensive line play in 2023 was at a much higher level than anything we're seeing with Cincinnati right now. Just quickly, one more Cincinnati Bengal. Chase Brown last week, at least I'll find a glimmer of hope. I'll find a little bit of positivity here. Chase Brown, the yards per carry were a little bit better, and the opportunity share for Chase Brown continues to remain very, very high versus his backup running backs. The production certainly wasn't there against Denver. In a bye week hell week where we have 6 teams on bye and the threat of guys like Trey Benson and Bucky Irving sitting, are you considering starting Chase Brown, or are you sort of like stuck starting him? What's your confidence level for Chase Brown against Detroit this week?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's like TD or bust kind of flex play. The Lions have had a good run defense again. And the other scary thing for Brown is like, yeah, the volume in terms of like the overall market share is still really good. Like they're barely playing Taj Boyd, but like Bengals finally, boosted their pass rate back up to 8% above expectation last week. So it's just 10 carries for them. I kind of see a similar spot too. They're probably going to get waxed by the Lions, like no doubt.
Yeah, I think the hope for fantasy managers when you look at the Detroit-Cincinnati game is you're actually hoping for a Lions complete annihilation where I know that's sort of sounds wrong, but if the Lions have one of these classic Ben Johnson / John Morton complete beatdowns where we see Detroit putting like 50 up, could there be a scenario where Cincinnati players just eat in garbage time, or Detroit gets off to a wildly fast start at the end of the first half and maybe the whole second half is almost garbage time and we sort of get there that way? I think that's sort of what we're hoping for. The game's in Cincinnati, but it just feels like it's almost no hope there. I mean, is that one that was in Detroit or in Cincy?
Yeah, this game's in Cincy, and they're still
in Cincy. Okay, so I was correct on that one. But yeah, it's in Cincy, but you almost like they have no hope, even though they're home team. It's just wild times.
Yeah, I mean, they're 10.5-point home dogs. Like it's not great.
and that feels
huge.
It feels
That's
light
huge in the NFL. Like
it feels light though. It feels light.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, for sure. Let's keep this one going. Speaking of the Bengals, we saw Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos even out their record, get that big win, complete annihilation with Nix and the Broncos really, really looking solid. This week, it gets a little more difficult for Denver. They play Philadelphia. What is your comfort level with Bo Nix in your starting lineup? Are you finding reasons to sit him? Are you starting him? Where are you at in terms of your confidence level?
This week, it's like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Last week, it was like an 8 or 9. It just came down to the matchup, and he smashed in a great matchup. Great bounce back spot at home, gets the Bengals, like you said. This week it's like polar opposite. Eagles' pass rush has not been as great this season, but they've really done a great job limiting opposing quarterbacks. Second fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. The problem is, like we've been talking about, I mean, we got 4 teams on a bye. There's like 16, 17 viable quarterbacks this week. We're going to get Jaden Daniels back, which is nice, but no Lamar. I certainly have a few teams, Theo, where like I'm probably going to be forced to play Nix, but yeah, like I said, it's not a high confidence level play.
Yeah, I don't have confidence in it either. The only the Broncos passing game, I do have confidence in using Cortland Sutton to an extent. I think he's probably a wide receiver too still. I don't know if you caught the end of the game. It was Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton and their wives, and the wives were both wearing it was the Step Brothers movie poster, but instead of John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, it was Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton. I mean, the connection
amazing
there it was an amazing, incredible vibes for Sutton every single week. So I'm there. I think Nix, the one silver lining for Nix would be we could get an occasional game where he produces with his legs, and maybe the Philadelphia defense forces him to do so and he sort of gets there. But I'm with you. He's somewhere in that mid-level QB2 range, not necessarily a guy that we're going to push into QB1 range. Let's talk about TJ Hockenson. Hockenson, it's just not happening for him this season. There was a couple of people that I know were making the argument that Carson Wentz has this affinity for tight ends. Maybe he's going to propel Hockenson, but it's just sort of more of the same. Hockenson seems like a player who was very, very overdrafted. Now we have Minnesota, who is going to be down 4 offensive linemen. I think there's potential that the tight ends are going to have to help out and block a little bit more. Is TJ Hockenson a player that you are sitting? Are you trying to put him in your starting lineup? I mean, it seems really dire this week for Hockenson against Cleveland.
Yeah, I've been writing him up as a sit. I'm going to keep doing it with Hawk because, like you said, it's just, for now 2.5, basically his last year and a half, 12 games. He's been clearly the third, target on this Vikings team behind Jefferson and Addison. We saw it just again this past week, dude. I mean, Hockenson's first 3 target share was 4%. You look at their 11 games last year, Jefferson was at a 25% target share. Addison was around like 21%, and then Hockenson was like 15. That's like low end tight end one. And then you mix in the fact the Vikings are playing a little slower. They're more run heavy this season. I would be looking to sell on Hockenson. I'll be honest. I've had no idea where to put Hawk in the rest of season rankings all year. I've just kept bumping him down to like tight end 13-ish now. And this isn't a great bounce back spot either. Browns have a really athletic middle of the field, giving up the 4th fewest yards per game, 5th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight ends. So I'm looking to sell on Hawk, even in like tight end premium, dude. This is like, this is another horrible year for tight ends. Like there's like 6 or 7 that matter, and then you can rank the 8 through 18 in basically any order, and I'd probably be okay with it. But yeah, it's scary for Hawk right now, man.
Yeah, tight end premium formats like FFPC, especially in Dynasty, Hockenson's like an asset that seems to lose value each and every week. You kind of hope for a touchdown and then you sell. You had your opportunity like 2 weeks ago. Hockenson, there's still a great deal of nostalgia when it comes to Hockenson based on he gave us like 2 top 3 point per game finishes at the tight end position in 2022 and 2023. But this year, it's just not happening. There's been some breakdowns of like him running routes. He looks not explosive. Like it doesn't look like the same fluidity and explosiveness that we're used to with him. A lot of bad vibes when it comes to TJ Hockenson, and I think good vibes when it comes to Jordan Addison. I know he was caught from behind, but we saw the big production in his first week back, and a lot of people were very upset he didn't score that long touchdown. I could have used that touchdown myself, but he did have over 100 receiving yards his first game back. So Addison, we're trusting. Jefferson is Jefferson. TJ Hockenson, though, I think you want to find a reason to put him on your bench. And if you're in a redraft league that has trades, Hockenson's a great name to just throw in there in 2-for-1s because of his name brand, the fact that you were taking him around like the tight end 5, tight end 6 this preseason. And in Dynasty, I think you cash out, even in tight end premium formats, try to make that Hockenson cash out for sure. Let's talk about the Eagles. And this is really a depressing one, but Kevin Patullo is a sicko. He should be put in prison somewhere for what he's done to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, 9 targets, but we only see 2 receptions for 7 yards. Devonta Smith as well, 2 targets for Devonta. Usually in games where A.J. Brown struggled, like in seasons past, we'd say, oh, Devonta must have had a decent game. This is really, really, really ugly. And Philadelphia continues to win games. They beat Tampa Bay 31-25, despite this complete lack of production, specifically with A.J. Brown. Are you starting him or sitting him? It seems like sacrilege to even ask about this one. But A.J. Brown, you don't have any confidence right now. Should you find reasons to pivot, even with all these teams on bye weeks?
That's the thing, is like it's such a thin week at receiver. I mean, he was going to project like a low end wide receiver 2, maybe high end wide receiver 3, but I mean, he's catching a Pat Surtain shadow. Devonta Smith does like at least have a slightly easier matchup getting Riley Moss and their slot corner, but yeah, it's not my confidence level with Brown in this passing offense now is like 2 or 3. It started slow last year too and just kind of gradually ramped up, but like you mentioned, I think this new offensive coordinator is a big step back. They're running a pretty bland offense overall in general. The one thing that you can hang your hat on, though, is he's A.J. Brown, and he can have one big play that saves his day, but he's kind of trending towards that boomer bust, like wide receiver 2 territory. And it's crazy like you were saying, crazy for a player of his talent level.
Yeah, it's like if we put A.J. Brown on about 20 other teams right now, I think that this would be a completely different story. We know he's not cooked because we've seen that big spike week from him when they were trailing against the Rams and they were forced to like take downfield shots to AJ. AJ was completely invisible in the first half, and then the second half had that huge week. So we know that's in the bag. If you put AJ Brown on so many teams right now, I think he would be thriving. But the offensive ecosystem in Philly is just really, really bad for skill position players. But hey, they're still winning games. Jalen Hurts is still getting rushing yardage. They're still able to run the ball, and they're going to continue winning. I wonder if it's going to catch up with them, this sort of caveman approach when you get to the NFL playoffs. I know they were able to come back against LA, and they were able to beat Tampa Bay, but there's something in the back of my mind saying this is going to catch up with you. You need to establish your weapons week in, week out. So we will see. Another player who was very highly drafted right about the same range as A.J. Brown. That whole second round dilemma was, should you take Drake London or Ladd McConkey or A.J. Brown? Right now, it looks very much like Drake London was the one who I know the two of us were discussing all summer long. Ladd McConkey, though, the Chargers wide receivers are thriving. Quentin Johnston continues to put up wide receiver 1 numbers. Keenan Allen, a quiet week, but he still has 5 catches. Ladd McConkey, on the other hand, only 1 reception on 6 targets. This looks really, really broken. Are you finding reasons to sit Ladd McConkey this week? A lot of fear and trepidation in the marketplace. Chargers play the Washington Commanders this week. An interesting game on paper, but specifically with Ladd, what are you doing?
So I've like completely different confidence levels with Brown and McConkey, like these two troubled receivers. London will be fine, I think, long term. Mooney picked up another injury, but he's still like just a volume-based wide receiver too. The volume will always be good with London, I think. With McConkey, like I see major reasons to buy low. And ahead of this game, like Washington has not been a very good secondary all season long. So Ladd last year averaged 7 targets per game. He's at 6.8 targets per game right now. And it's simply like he dropped a few passes last week. Chemistry has been a little off with Herbert. And I think this is like a case of not seeing the forest through the trees. Like, yeah, Quentin Johnston is by far the big problem, if you want to call it a problem for McConkey. But like the Chargers are still very pass heavy. Like this is the most pass heavy team in the league. They're probably going to have to maintain it because they've lost their best tackles. Obviously, they're going to probably struggle to run the ball for the majority of the season. So they're going to have to continue to just rely on Herbert. They might play a little slower to, try to grind out drives. But listen, I think, McConkey's volume level is the same as it was last year. He's now catching a pretty good matchup. Last week was also a good matchup, but I'm still like playing McConkey as a pretty solid wide receiver too.
Yeah, I think I moved McConkey down to like the flex range, but yeah, like you said, I mean, it's a guy that we're used to seeing put up spike weeks. His season high is wide receiver 24 on the week in week 1. It feels like you said, when you have this many people sort of beating him up, it's the time to buy. The marketplace is super, super low. Mm-hmm. I know I moved him down in my dynasty wide receiver rankings just based on this sort of production and role. And I'm sure a lot of other people did. In season long, there's probably even more fear out there, especially when you see what's going on with QJ. So I do think sending out an offer for Ladd, things could shift. And then also we have in the back of our mind, Keenan Allen is 33 years old. Can he hold up for the entire season? If Keenan goes down, you have to think that the Ladd McConkey is going to absorb those targets himself. I'm sure a couple other guys like Oronde Gadsden, Trey Harris would be interesting if Keenan Allen went down, but it would mostly go to Ladd. They're sort of have overlapping skill sets and overlapping like first read rates when it comes to Herbert over the last 2 years. So Ladd has a bunch of outs to return value this season. And one of his outs is just he's good at football. We know he's good at football. Yeah. Pop the tape in from the NFL playoff record-setting performance Ladd had. So he didn't forget how to play. Let's keep this one going. Let's talk about Darius Slayton. We saw last year when Malik went down and missed some time, Slayton had a massive 26-point performance. He also had 2 other games with 11.5 points or more in like a 1-month period. Slayton was very, very effective. Can he do it this week? And does he have season-long value for fantasy managers looking to replace Malik Nabers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 2 games last year that Nabers missed, like fully missed. He had a 30% target share. Like you mentioned, had the one big game, but double-digit targets in both those games. Produced like a pretty solid wide receiver too. Giants are going to be a lot, more run heavy, I think, these days with Dart and Scattaboo for sure. But Slayton this week, it's I think it's a pretty good spot. This is kind of the reason we liked Keon Coleman last week, and that didn't work out so well because the Bills really didn't have to throw that much. But like the Saints are an outside funnel, giving up the 7th most yards per game to outside wide receivers. Good efficiency numbers at 2.7 yards per route run. Only Dallas is giving up more to outside receivers. So, yeah, I think this is it's a good spot for Slayton. Less so for Wan'Dale Robinson, but dude, I mean, Wan'Dale for PPR could get 8-9 targets and have a 7-catch 50-yard game and be fine, be usable.
And how about Theo Johnson? I know we're not very high on him in the rankings. Maybe you could take this as do you want to cram him in your lineup this week? And does he have season-long viability with his new potential role with guys kind of overcompensating for losing the target monster in Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, and tight end premium leagues for sure, but I struggle to see him being like a viable streamer. I think he'll be the third target on this team right now behind Slayton and Robinson.
And then how about Jaxson Dart? Dart last week led all quarterbacks in rushing yardage, led all quarterbacks in rush attempts, and he found the end zone. Some really, really positivity with him with his rushing ability. Now he loses Neighbors. It is a really, really plus matchup. How much confidence do you have in Dart this week?
Yeah, I think Dart is once again one of the best streamers on this slate. We had some pretty good ones last week. This is like very clearly he's the best one just because of his rushing ability. He's probably picked up in a lot of leagues, but yeah, I mean, Dart is like at worst QB 15 or 16 this week. I think I'd play Nix over him still, but yeah, he's going to project really well. And this game environment with Giants Saints, like I know it's kind of gross offensively. The total is not great. It's like 41, but Saints are the fastest team in the NFL by pace, just ripping off a ton of plays. Giants picked up their pace last week, ran a little more no huddle with Dart, which was good to see. So yeah, I think this game has some sneaky shootout potential.
Yeah, and Dart has such a solid floor. I think he's going to be in that high-end QB2 discussion every single week and maybe get a chance to push himself into like the QB 10 through 12 range if it really does take off with his legs. He has the combination of he's a very willing scrambler, and the Giants are going to use design runs for him. So he's interesting. Dylan Gabriel takes over at quarterback this week for the Cleveland Browns. We know we're starting Quinshon Judkins. He's established himself. He's an absolute beast. What does this do for the pass catching weapons? Is there a lean to maybe elevate Judy? Do you think that this is a Harold Fannin? Is this a David Njoku? Sometimes we see these rookie quarterbacks take over and they have sort of target lock on one particular receiver. Is there someone you think could benefit from the quarterback change here? Or is it really a have caution when it comes to Browns pass catchers in general this week?
Yeah, I'm treating them with extreme caution. Like this defense is just awesome. I mean, Brian Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators in the game, going to send a ton of blitz packages, just kind of weird looks at Gabriel to kind of confuse them. The Vikings had, like last year at least, they gave up a ton of production to outside receivers, but that's like been polar opposite this year. Third fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to outside wide receivers. I'm pretty much just going to write this up as like Judkins is basically must start at this point. And then the rest of these receivers like Judy, Njoku, Fannin, no Cedric Tillman. Isaiah Bond's going to, play a full-time role. I think the targets are going to kind of be split pretty evenly between those four.
Miami loses Tyreek Hill for the season. Really, really a devastating injury to see. It was gruesome. And it could be Tyreek Hill doesn't play another snap in the NFL at his age. I mean, we hate to say that sort of thing, but it is going to create some opportunities for multiple Dolphins pass catchers. Malik Washington is going to step into a full-time role. I'm kind of over the top and excited about Washington, maybe a little too excited. He was a mega producer at UVA. He fell to day 3 because of a injury concerns. It wasn't anything with his play on the field. He set the single season ACC record for receptions in a season. He set the UVA record for the most receiving yardage in a season. And he's looked good on a limited sample size in the NFL. He also has the added bonus, Graham, where they use him a lot as a runner. I even wrote in the waiver wire column a couple weeks ago when Tyreek Hill was still very healthy that I thought that if Devon Achane went down with an injury, there'd be some contingent value for Washington just on the versatile, like Deebo Samuel corollary type. Your thoughts on Washington? Are you looking to get him in some lineups, looking to get him in some DFS lineups, and sort of your season-long outlook for him?
Yeah, he has some upside for sure, just strictly because, I mean, this offense is always highly condensed. That's just the way McDaniel runs his offense. It's obviously like a huge boost for Waddle and Achane. I don't think we need to talk a whole lot about that. Darren Waller like has some season-long viability too, especially in tight end premium. They're going to have red zone packages for him all year. Washington is like a pretty good like wide receiver 4 or 5 stash, and like you said, if you're in a pinch at receiver this week, he's going to be out there running full-time routes. He's going to get the manufactured stuff over the middle. Waddle's probably going to have to stretch the field a little bit more. I'm a little bit concerned about this offense though, man. Like just in general, like Tua's not been playing particularly well. I think McDaniel's called a relatively good offense to kind of play within Tua's strengths and weaknesses right now. But like Tyreek, to my eye, still had his deep speed and like had, maybe even 90% of it, lost a step a little bit. Like they don't have anybody obviously to stretch the field like that. Waddle can do it, but yeah, I think we're going to see this Dolphins offense take even a further step back, which is gross to think about.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what they were like built around was Tyreek Hill, and Hill had that like ugly week 1, but he seemed to really be trending up. We saw a really strong week 2, a really strong week 3, and then he was playing well against the Jets when we went down. So, and they get the win. So it's really, this could be catastrophic for Miami. I think on the good news for Miami is they're playing Carolina this week, who I realize Carolina beat the hell out of Atlanta at home, but it's still not a team that we would really worry about that much. Then they play Cleveland in 2 weeks, which Cleveland has a fantastic defense, but it'll be versus Dylan Gabriel, not necessarily a daunting thing. And Miami's front 7 is pretty solid, but I think we do get back to a lot of those low ADOT looks like we saw last year, where it was Tua getting the ball out quickly to Devon Achane. Jalen Waddle, I think, definitely trends up, but Washington, I think, could be the wild card here. I know there's a lot of Waller enthusiasm, and certainly in tight end premium leagues, I think Waller is a guy you need to add. But Washington, like the enthusiasm people are having for Slayton, I think after kind of looking at it from like a bird's eye view, I think Washington and Slayton, they both have an opportunity. With Washington, it's a little bit more unknown upside because he's a younger player. Slayton's a veteran who sort of steps in as almost a neighbor's handcuff. Washington could kind of have an expansive role. And I'll throw out one other little variable. Jalen Waddle's dealt with some little injuries this year where it's caused him to miss some practice time. So we'll keep an eye on Malik Washington. Graham, we dropped a couple of some very random start-sit questions this week. I dropped it a little late. I'd like to put this out on X before we record. I forgot to put it out, so I put it actually a few minutes before. But we have one interesting one. It's bye-week troubles. Start Zach Charbonnet or start Travion Henderson?
I go Henderson.
I'm going Henderson.
You got the goal line carry. You got the goal line carry, but it's still split, man. It's still annoying.
Yeah, it's very annoying for sure. I think for me, I'm going Henderson, though. Scott Barrett's talked about this a little bit. I know that you're still positive about Travion. I'm still positive. I think the Travion breakout week could happen. Charbonnet and him, I think, are pretty close in like the rankings. I think we could put it like this. If you're looking for like a floor play, a guy who we can sort of predict the volume, a guy who you maybe need 10 points from, I go Charbonnet. If I was a little bit of an underdog and I need a little bit of upside in this start-sit decision, I would definitely go Henderson, but they're just so close that I would lean towards the player that I think has more upside. I think it's Henderson.
Yeah. Better matchup too. Buffalo's really struggled on run defense, and the Bucs have been awesome, like really good on run defense.
Drake May has also been really, really awesome, which could be really fun. That the Buffalo New England game, that could be a really, really fun, interesting one for us to see. Just with the way that New England sort of punching above their ADPs with the amount of points that they've been scoring. So we'll see about that one. Buffalo is a very difficult opponent for them, but this could be a fun one for Drake May. And maybe we get a little bit of get a little bit of positive game flow for Henderson, where it could be a trailing environment. Maybe they want to speed things up. We could see him in his receiving ability finally sort of stand out. Let's talk about one more start sit. We rarely get these ones. We have a defensive start sit question, and it's two defenses that I think we would both rank towards the very top. You've got the Minnesota Vikings this week, or you've got the Arizona Cardinals. So according to our projections, these are both top 5 defenses. Arizona goes up against the hapless Tennessee Titans, and the Minnesota Vikings go up against Dillon Gabriel. And of course, this game's going to be in Europe for Dillon Gabriel making his first start. But Brian Flores and that Minnesota defense, for me, I think I'm leaning towards Minnesota. But you could talk me into Arizona. Which way are you going?
Yeah, Vikings Flores is going to have Dillon Gabriel in hell. Like they're blitzing at 47%, dude. Like they're going to, that's by far the highest rate in the league. They're going to just absolutely confuse him in his first game. It's like the worst possible start for a rookie quarterback at this point.
And a get right moment for the Minnesota Vikings as well. Minnesota, of course, lost to Pittsburgh. Really kind of a disappointing loss for them. They gave up the really long reception to DK Metcalf. They were absolutely fried by Kenneth Gainwell. We know this is a good defense that can impose their will on people. So I think we're both leaning towards Minnesota. Thanks for putting the start-sit questions in there. And thanks for tuning in every single week. Graham, what else do you have going on this week?
Yeah, start-sit will be out on Thursday morning. Like it always is. I'm recording matchup points with John and Brett this afternoon. That'll be up on our YouTube channel, and the Fantasy Points podcast goes out every Thursday. And Cashing Points with myself, Jake, and Ryan Friday night. Stream at 7 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, make sure you are subscribed to Fantasy Points YouTube, the fastest growing YouTube in fantasy. We are very close to 22,000 subscribers. We might have 22,000 subscribers by the time this show airs, Graham. So big thank you to our audience. And if you want to level your game up, if you need a bailout, you're at a 1-3 start, you're at a 2-2 start, and 0-4 start, and you need that bailout, subscribe to Fantasy Points. We've got you covered. Use the code Theo and get 15% off any single package. We'll see you soon.